today we are here for a lecture that's entitled The Unveiling of Persian Architecture. However, before I introduce our speaker, I would like to thank all the co-sponsors of the events of the Persian Cultural Festival. These are, it's a long list, so bear with me. KU Persian Club, Center for Global and International Studies, Department of Film and Media Studies, Department of Architecture, Department of Dance, Middle East Studies Program, Center for Russian, East European and Eurasian Studies, Hall Center for the Humanities, Spencer Museum of Art, School of Languages, Literature and Cultures. So all these are the co-sponsors, so thanks to all the co-sponsors. And Jessica Irving, who did hard work in putting together everything and organizing these things, working hard behind the scene, and Jennifer, Donald, all the people who have been working to make this festival successful. Well, now coming back to today's talk, lecture, our today's speaker is Nilou Vakil, who earned a BFA in Design from the University of Arts in Tehran and a Master of Architecture from the University of Colorado's College of Architecture and Planning in Denver. Currently, she is an adjunct professor at the University of Kansas and lectures on architectural design studio. She is also an affiliated faculty member of the Middle Eastern Studies program at KU. Nilou is currently, she is also president and the principal architect of In Situ Design, and her specialization is in design public buildings with a focus on civil projects, museums, and cultural institutions. Nilou has practiced in both US as well as abroad. She was most recently an advisor and board member of the Regional Transportation District's Advisory Committee in Colorado. She worked on this project. She was involved in the multi-billion-dollar light rail expansion project. It was a big project. She has also coordinated projects in the Middle East. One of the projects is in the International Estidama Sustainability Rating Program in Dubai, Abu Dhabi. In Abu Dhabi, UAE, right? She has also delivered, she has been invited at many places to deliver lectures and present her works, including Museum of Contemporary Arts and Academy in Tehran, Denver University, and University of Colorado. So help me welcome our speaker, Nilou Vakil, today.
Thank you for the Middle Eastern Studies putting together such an amazing series of events. This has been really, really great. 5 weeks of Persian events. I tell my friends in LA and they can't believe it, so, which is great. So when Jessica originally talked to me about giving a lecture about Persian architecture for this festival, I wasn't sure how to summarize Persian architecture in 35-40 minutes. It's totally undoable, but we'll try to make a little bit of an attempt to chisel a little bit at it. So we all are aware of the isolation that has been between Iran and the Western world in the past 35 to 36 years because of the political climate. And this isolation has caused that separation between academics, intellectual, basically aspects of this world, and economics. This isolation is not just between the Western world and Iran. I was surprised to see that this isolation is even with the neighboring countries. In 2011, my husband and I packed our lives and moved to United Arab Emirates. We lived in Sharjah, which is right outside of Dubai, and I know most of you guys are familiar with the city of Dubai, to practice architecture and teach. And to my surprise, that isolation existed to the same level of what we see here. I was excited because I could talk about architecture in a sense that people in that region will understand. If I said Persian architecture, or if I talked about a key building, they would understand what I'm talking about, but that wasn't the case. It became apparent to me that that isolation is very globalized, and it's not just between us and them. That isolation is really between the country as we know it, as Iran, and the rest of the world. So this isolation is to a level that this is what I get from my mother-in-law for Persian New Year. So I get Iran for Dummies, and it's the extra stupid edition. So I find that very, very interesting that books like this are written and they're given as gifts to Persians. And I mean, this is the isolation that we're dealing with. So it's not only cultural, it's really within our families too. Let's move on. So when we talk about the Persian world, this is really the map that comes to mind. It is this map is from 550 BC, so almost 2,500 years ago. It shows the map of Persia during the Achaemenid dynasty, which was the dynasty that we associate with the Persian Empire. So it's from northern Africa all the way to Turkey, all the way to what we know as the Middle East, and so all the way to India. This is really the map of the Persian world during the Achaemenid dynasty. The map of Iran is this now. So this is the geographic and the political map of Iran, which is truly the center of what it used to be the Persian world. So what we're going to explore today, we're going to talk about some of the key buildings within this boundaries of the current Iran. Because everything else outside of this belongs to other countries, right? So the first location that we're going to look at, or the first building that we're going to look at, is the Chogha-Zanbil ziggurat. The ziggurat of Chogha-Zanbil is located in the Khuzestan province, which is close to the border of Iran and Iraq. And ziggurat is an archetype, is a type of an architecture that is built for temples and for the gods. So what happens is the floor plan of it is a square, and as it goes up through these platforms, it successively gets smaller and smaller as you get closer and closer to the gods, to the heaven. So it was meant to bring human beings close to the gods and closer to the heavens. This was one of the best preserved ziggurats in the world, and still to this date it is. It was discovered by a group of French people doing some flying over the region and looking at the land to figure out where the next refinery should be in that region. This is a very oil-rich region. And they saw that it looked like, they saw a landscape that looked like an upside-down basket. Zambil in Farsi means a basket. So when they excavated the area, they discovered this very well-preserved mud brick building. The significance of this is the access to the top of it. And most of the ziggurats, which are in the Mesopotamian region, they have a series of spiral ramps that takes you from the earth to the gods. So you have to have a journey. There's a journey associated with that takes you to the top of the building. For this one, this is one of the only ziggurats that has a step. So there is a set of steps that takes you from the earth to the gods, which is a little bit of a different approach. And this is right outside the Mesopotamian region. So it's not truly in the center of that type of architecture that was associated with that region. You cannot go in the center of these buildings. Ziggurats are only built, the center of them are for the gods or for the kings. But you can go around them. So there are a series of corridors that takes you around the ziggurats. And this is a hinge of a door that obviously is not there anymore. What is what is interesting about this ziggurat, specifically about this one, are the carvings that are there. So this one specifically says, I, the king of Persia, build this stepped building out of silver, gold, and black opal. And if any human beings touch this or take away from this, they will be cursed by our God, and their children will be wiped from underneath the sun. So for such a temple that was supposed to be a temple for the gods, they put a curse on you if you touch it, or if you take something away from it. So I find this extremely interesting that there is such a negative comment associated with such a positive notion. From there, we are going to go to Persepolis, and I'm sure a lot of you guys are familiar with Persepolis and Shiraz. So we were here, right next to the Iran and Iraq's border, and now we go to Shiraz, right outside of Shiraz, which is now the capital of the Achaemenid dynasty. This complex was built as a ceremonial castle and a ceremonial fortress for the kings of Achaemenid. So Cyrus the Great ordered the build of this complex. And the complex consists of many, many different halls and palaces and temples. There is nothing residential about it. It is all about ceremonial aspects of the kingdom. It is built on a platform that is accessed by these set of stairs that goes to the raised platform. So that by itself shows there is a difference between people who are in and people who are out. The columns were inspired by the Roman columns. The majority of the columns here used to be wood that was brought from Syria and from Lebanon. And anywhere that the use of wood wasn't appropriate, they used stone columns, and those are the only columns that actually remain after Alexander burned this down. So that was in 330 BC almost. So there is a lot of influence from the neighboring regions. So this is not just about the Persian world, it's about influence and that mutual cultural exchange between what we see here and the world around it. So this is a map of it. The stairs that we talked about are up there on A, and B is over there. That's the rectangle over there. It's the square over there. This is truly the gateway to the Persian world. This is what it's supposed to be. It consists of many different hallways and palaces, and one of the most important ones was the Palace of the 100 columns right there. One of the most specific parts of this building are the stairs. The staircases that are symmetrical, right next to each other. They have the proportions of the steps are very important to pay attention to. The steps are very, very shallow, so the risers are not really high. The risers are very short, and the threads are really, really long. This was supposed to slow people down, so create that regal closeness or regal approach to the gods as they're bringing their gifts to the gods of the Achaemenid and the Zoroastrians. This is you have to slow down and pay respect to where you're entering. This is the gateway of the nations, and the gateway of the nations was an indication of unity. So everybody had to go through this gateway to enter the palace. And this is the symbol of the Persian New Year. When you go to Iran and want to buy a little card to send to somebody, mostly you see this on it. There was a painting of this, there is some sort of an association with this. It was about Nowruz, which was the first day of spring. By the way, happy Nowruz, everybody. The bull was a symbol of the moon. The lion was the symbol of the sun. So the sun always takes over the moon. So that was sort of symbolic of the new year as the days get longer. This was, again, the sign of unity as people, as Persian soldiers are holding hands. So there were mods and Persian soldiers holding hands all over this, all over the reliefs of these Persians holding hands all over the complex. Excuse me. So this is a depiction, this is a virtual rendering of what people think Persepolis looked like. It looks extremely contemporary. I know some of you guys might think this could be a building from today. But these are depictions. Obviously, we don't know what it looked like. Some people think they look like this. But again, we don't know. Well, we know the materials and we know the importance of this, which was the center of the Persian Empire. From there, we go to Bam. Bam is located in the Kerman province. It is at the southern edge of the high plateau, Iranian plateau. Here, right close to the border of Afghanistan and Pakistan. And it was built in the Parthian Empire during that. So we're going to AD now. This is a highly arid and dry and hot land. And this was built based on an innovation of putting mud brick and rammed earth together. So interestingly enough, KU has a great rammed earth studio in the architecture department. It's called Dirtworks Studio. So if you're interested, you can look at their website. It's pretty amazing. So the invention of the rammed earth, which is putting two forms parallel to each other and putting mud in there and ramming mud, letting it dry, and then put another layer over and over it, allowed for these fortresses to be built to this height. So imagine the thickness of these walls. They're very, very thick, and as you go up, they get narrower and narrower all the way to the top. And at the top, there is a use of the sun-baked brick for this fortress. So that combination allowed for this fortress to stand tall for years and years. One of the other key inventions of the Persian Empire was the water distribution system, which is called the qanat. Qanats are these water distribution system, these man-made wells that are connected underground by a series of tunnels that connect to a water table, and eventually it emerges out of ground to bring water to dry desert. And it becomes very, very useful for farmlands in very dry areas of the country. And Iran as a country is a pretty dry country in the middle of it. But this allowed Persians to live in locations which water was not really accessible. So they made water accessible by this very, very innovative system. So this is a picture of people really digging qanats. And the reason there's a picture of that, because people to this day dig qanats, and qanat is truly a vernacular water distribution system in the country to this day. So this image is actually a pretty nice picture of people putting dirt in these wells and lifting it up and replacing by reinforcement. It was a very expensive way to bring water into villages, so sometimes villages got together, 4 or 5 villages together, and decided to do that as building cities. So some of these cities that are built on top of qanats are the merger of these villages coming together and agreeing on maintaining and building qanats together. So it is a very innovative social innovation, and it's also innovative in the water system ways. So this is how it changes the landscape. So when you look at a qanat system, this is what you see from above. So it truly changes the landscape and allows for an oasis like that to happen in the middle of a desert. So without the qanat system, this would not be possible, right? But this happens all over the country. You see these little oases in the middle of the land. So in 2004, in December 26th of 2004, the day after Christmas, An earthquake to the magnitude of 6.8 hits just north of Bam and truly destroys it. So this is an image from 2000, and this is an image from 2012. So even for the past 12 years, trying to restore some of this, it hasn't been possible. But that earthquake was really devastating for that region. All right, from that, we're going to go to the city of Yazd. City of Yazd is truly built on adobe. So adobe is different from the mud brick. And adobe brings in straw. It's kind of like a straw bale structure, which is different from the mud brick and the rammed earth. This city was built, the majority of the city is built out of adobe. And it's one of the most continuously lived in cities in the world. So for the past 5,000 years, people lived in the city continuously. The reason people could do that was because of the invention of the towers, the wind towers. So these are the series of wind catchers. Sorry, I jumped a little too fast. These are the wind towers that allow for the hot air to exhaust from these and the cool air to come down. And then the combination of that and the qanat system allowed for a sustainable water cooling system that I'm going to get to. So the city is full of streets like that as you're walking through these cities, they're covered. They provide shelter for people to go from one side to the other side of the city without really being so hot and so dry. So this was again another innovative way to allow people to comfortably move through the city. So we talked about this. These are some of the better examples of the wind catchers that are the significance of the city of Yazd. So in combination with the qanat system, so you have the wind tower and you have the qanat system right underneath that. This combination allowed for people to really, really cool down living in the middle of the desert. So the system brings the water from the qanat to the basement of a building. And the wind is caught by this tower, brought into the basement, cooled down by an evaporative cooling system, circulating through the house. So if you have a vent here, this air will circulate through the house, and the hot air would get out of the house or the building. So this became truly an innovation that allowed people to live in the deserts. So you have water now, and you have an air conditioning system. So you can live comfortably in a very dry climate, in a hot climate. This is an example of the pool from the qanat that brings water in. It's typically in the basement of some of these historic homes. And in the summers, people actually gather around these basements. People don't live on the top floor in the summers. People actually come down to be very cool because the temperature is sometimes 20 degrees cooler than above. Many sustainability strategies that we see today are inspired by this. So the sustainability strategies today, in the past 20, 30 years, have been paying a lot of attention to what is happening with this passive system. And they've been studying this to allow the Western world to become more energy-free or reduce the amount of energy spent on cooling systems. And this is an example of a project in New Mexico. As you can see, you have 85-degree weather as 36% relative humidity brought into this wind tunnel. There's a pool of water underneath here. As the air moves through the building, it's cooled down to 59 degrees with 85% relative humidity. Just by doing a correct way to bring air inside the home with no air conditioning system. From there, we're going to go to Isfahan, and I hope that everybody knows about a little bit about Isfahan. Isfahan was the city that really flourished in the 16th century. When the capital of Iran, capital of Persia at that time, was moved to Isfahan. The Safavid dynasty, where the dynasty responsible to make the city a very vibrant city, to allow the city of Isfahan to be on par with other big cities in the world. So that was really the intention, to put Isfahan on the map of the rest of the world, important cities in the world. And they truly did a good job, and to this date, we see the great examples of Isfahani architecture that we still study in the architecture world today. This is the dash line, if you can see in the back of the room, is the historic map of Isfahan. This bigger outline is the city of Isfahan today. And we're going to focus on the center of it, which is the big square in Isfahan, which is called Naqsh Jahan Square. So Naqsh Jahan Square means the pattern of the world. So the idea was you go here and you almost see the world. And Isfahan was called Isfahan Nisbe Jahan, which means Isfahan is half the world. So to this day, people say Isfahan Nisbe Jahan, which means if you see Isfahan, that means you've seen half the world. This square has been an icon in the Persian world for a long time. It consists of religious, cultural, and economical aspects of a city. So all of that come together within one square. And it allows you to activate the entire square by providing all these great amenities around it. So around the square is the perimeter of the square has all these shops. They're typically two-story shops. The top stories of the shops today are not being used anymore. So the first level of all the shops are open to the public. That's a big activation of that of the square. The first building we're going to look at is the mosque on the south side. So that is called the Imam's Mosque. It used to be the Shah's Mosque before the revolution, and now it's the Imam's Mosque. It was a mosque that was built only for men to go and pray. So it was very specific to men to go and pray, and it consists of these minarets, the four major minarets. And the proportions and the scale of it was extremely large, comparing to what you see on the square. So this image tells you how large that dome is, comparing to people who are standing right next to it as a little scale. It really dominates the square as a religious icon of Isfahan. It is extremely heavy, extremely masculine, and very geometric. So the patterns you see, even though they look like flowers, but these are built from very geometric pieces in this mosque. This is the entry to the mosque, so you are completely overwhelmed as you enter the mosque. And the tile work is not only for decoration, it is for acoustics too, because the sound waves hit this and it distributes. Also, from one of the most recent researches done for this building, especially the entry, it was a way to cool down people as they entered the mosque. So the air hits this, and the air distributes in different directions, and it creates a cooling effect, just like a fan does, a fan in your house. This will do the same thing. So the recent studies have shown that this was truly a change in the climate as you go from a hot climate or in the square to the mosque. So that comfort was there as you're entering to say your prayers. The next building we're going to look at is the Sheikh Lutfullah Mosque. The Sheikh Lutfullah Mosque, as you can see, it's a lot smaller than the Imam's Mosque. This mosque was built for women to pray in. So now you have men to pray in the south side of this this square, and women to pray on the east side of the square. And this is extremely light. The scale is a lot smaller, and there's no minarets. So one of the significance of this building, this mosque, doesn't have minarets. Most of the Iranian mosques and Persian mosques do have minarets. The scale of it is a lot smaller, but as you enter, it's very light and very lacy. It consists of these mushrabiyas, which are these screens that allow light to filter in, that lights the corridors as you get into this dome, underneath the dome. So this is, when you stand underneath the dome, this is what you see. The dome is sitting on a series of screens that bring light in. So it's a 360 degree way to bring light into the space. So if the sun is out and is shining, you see the rays coming in, no matter what time of the day, which is a very beautiful way to occupy a space in my mind. And it looks like it's floating because it's sitting on a series of mushrabiyah screens, and it's extremely light. This was, the pattern of this dome has been used in a lot of Persian carpet weaving. So it has inspired a lot of carpet weaving, and the patterns are extremely intricate and detailed. And a lot of flowers, you see a lot of flowers and botanicals associated with that. The next building we're going to look at is the Ali Qapu Palace. The Palace of Ali Qapu was built as a residence for the Safavid kings. So this was ordered by Shah Abbas, which is the iconic figure of the Safavid era. And it was built for him and his family to live in. But the front portion of it was built to receive guests from all over the world. So ambassadors of all over the world will come in and give their gifts to the Safavid kings from this front entry. So one of the significance of this building is this terrace that overlooks the square. This was extremely important because it's kind of like a show-off. I'm showing off my city to you. So stand here and look and see what we have done. So this was an icon for them to receive guests here, and they would invite a lot of guests. It was very elaborate parties that they had in these rooms. I'm not going to get into the residential portion of it, but one very, very important room in this palace is the music room. And this music room, with all these carvings of the wood on the ceilings and on the walls, allowed for one of the best sort of passive acoustical systems that you can think about. So to this day, you enter this room and it quiets down, and it creates this sort of calm sense when you get in there, even though you have tons of people around you. So there's not a lot of echo, there's not a lot of echoing of the sound happening, and acoustically it's extremely well done. From there, we're going to go to the bazaar, to the market. The main market in Isfahan truly controlled the economy of the town, of the city. It wasn't the bank, it was really the merchants, and it was the bazaar and the market that controlled the economy of the region, really, as the capital of Iran, or capital of the Persian world. This was extremely important, and it's one of the largest markets that is known, the traditional markets as we know it in the world. This is the floor plan of it. So when you walk, this is the edge of the square. As you walk in, it consists of many different chambers, and these chambers, they host one variety of merchants. So all the merchants come together. For example, the silver market is all together. The gold market is all together. The spice market is all together. This, or the rug making market, or the Persian carpet making corridors are all together. This would allow not only for the price of the goods to be controlled, it would allow a level of convenience for people to go shop and come back, kind of like a mall that we go in, a modern mall that we know of. But this obviously was a lot older and a lot more intricate. It truly became its own. It created its own life. There was a mosque in it. To this day, actually, there is a mosque in it. There are restaurants and cafes and even bathhouses. The bathhouse is closed today, but it used to be a bathhouse here too. But the connection doesn't really happen from the square. The connection happens from the residential and the neighborhoods too. So all of these hallways and all these arteries go directly to the residential parts of Isfahan too, which allow people to come in, do their shopping, and get out without really interfering with what's happening within the mall, within the big square. So this is the entry to the market, to the bazaar, which sits right across from the main mosque, the Imam's mosque, which was very dominant. So think about that conversation between religion and economy that is happening in this square. So truly religion and economy, they speak to each other as a symbol here. This is an example of the spice market inside the Isfahan's bazaar. And this is the roof system that's over. Most of the traditional bazaars have this roof system, which allow for light to come in and for some sort of ventilation to happen. And also protects people from the elements. All right, we're gonna go to Tehran now. Tehran is the 8th largest populated city in the world. And it is obviously the current capital of Iran, we all know that. In 1950s, and exactly 1959, the Shah of Iran met this woman who was a Persian architecture student in Paris. They fell in love and got married. And this was Shah's 3rd wife, but the first 2 wives were out of the picture at that point. So she brought a sense of Western architecture and art into the country. She was a big advocate for building structures like this. She became the client for hiring architects to do things like this. It became extremely, extremely contemporary. So buildings like this started to emerge from Tehran, or in Tehran started to emerge. And this building is called the Azadi Tower. It was intended to symbolize Iran as a first-class country. This was done in 1971. It wanted to put Iran on the map of the rest of the world. Like we know the Liberty statue, and we associate it with the US. We have the Eiffel Tower, and we associate it with Paris and France. And this was supposed to be an icon for Iran. And the location of it was very critical because it was only a few miles from the international airport in Tehran. So no matter where you were going or where you were landing from, you would somehow interact with this structure. You had to go around the circle and go around the square to get to your destination, or you had to go around the square to make it to the airport. It truly became the symbol of Iran, but it also became the symbol of art and culture. Underneath this building, there is a big auditorium and a full museum that is accessed by this opening. And I've seen concerts and I've been to the museum, but it's not known for that. But it truly became that symbol of Iran and art and culture. That was really the intent of this building. For the first time, and we're talking about 1971, for one of the first examples of using computers to design every single piece of stone that went underneath this arch. So the carving of these curved stones became an example of a contemporary way to even assemble architecture. It wasn't just about the design anymore. The design of it became something from this combination, a hybrid of what it was in the past with a contemporary notion. But the construction method of it became very contemporary too. This is the Museum of Contemporary Art in Tehran. Farah, which was the queen of Persia, of Iran at that time, she commissioned her cousin to design this building. And this is the Museum of Contemporary Art in Tehran, which consists of 8 large galleries. And as you can see, there is an homage to the wind towers in Yazd, a direct inspiration from that. But these were not wind towers, obviously. They became light catchers, and they brought light into the galleries, indirect light into every single space as you're walking through the gallery, and this actually steps down as you walk through it, so it becomes the basement of it. But they brought light indirect light into all the galleries, so it wouldn't damage the art. At the same time, you were dealing with natural light as you're moving through a space to a space. This is the courtyard of the building there. And this, you really see the wind catchers here in this image. So up to now, the Western world sees Iran as this vibrant Middle Eastern city that is truly powered by the consumption and production of oil. This is before the 1979 Islamic Revolution. And after the 1979 Islamic Revolution, Iran was faced with 10 years of war, which brought that academic, intellectual, and economical separation and isolation between Iran and the rest of the world. Most of the images that we know since then is this, right? It's the protesters scaling the walls of the US Embassy. And this image, I'm sure everybody's seen it. I've seen it a million times. This is what the image that we have in mind when we talk about Iran. But only after 20 years of rebuilding and reconstructing Iran, today a new generation of architects are trying to find that Persian identity. And that Persian identity is found through their heritage and the connection to the contemporary world and to the future as we know it.